Alright, guys, it is Thursday night. Just finished watching the Eagles-Giants game, and we're going to do things a little different today. I'm going to make a video, the likes of which I've not made in years. I haven't talked about the Seattle Mariners on YouTube in a very long time. I don't think I've ever done it on this channel. But I do watch most of the games. I watched like 130 games this year. I follow almost every game in some capacity. I've been rooting for this team for 22 years, just like the Seahawks. And I want to talk about it because we had an interesting season, and I would call it a successful season. I just don't know if there's going to be anything coming out of it. Now, the last 10 years of rooting for the Mariners, I've kind of gone into seasons with the mentality of, I understand that this team never really puts together a World Series caliber roster or even a playoff caliber roster. They're always fringe playoff contenders at best. So I've always said, I don't care if you make the playoffs so much. I don't care if you make the World Series or anything like that. I understand that in baseball it's really hard to make the playoffs, especially when you don't have a good team because there are so many games you have to go through. So I've always said I just want these guys to entertain me until football starts. If they can still be in the race by the time preseason football starts, then I'm going to be happy because they gave me something to watch over the summer when, you know, there's nothing really else I like to watch in terms of things that run through the summer. So the last few years they have done that, and this year they definitely did that, but it's a particularly interesting season because they almost were a lot more than that, because for a good chunk of this season they were way in the lead for a wild card berth, and they even competed for the division with Houston for a little bit. But it was not to be, and I can't get mad about it. I can't. There's just no way that I can be mad about the season these guys had, because I thought this was going to be the year where maybe the bottom dropped out, because the last few years they've been really competitive. They've won a lot of games. They've had decent seasons. They've seen some players play really well. It hasn't amounted to anything worth a crap, but it has been entertaining to watch, and they have been in the conversation almost the whole season. So, I was seeing this as maybe being the year where things fell off, because I saw Cano was getting old, Cruz was getting really old, and of course Felix, who had already shown signs that he was not going to be the guy anymore, he was getting old. So I was like, well, I don't think this is going to be a very good season. We might be a 70-win team, and obviously I'm okay with that. I mean, the difference between a 70-win team and an 80-win team is ultimately not significant in when you're trying to pursue, higher goals, but maybe a really bad season will allow us to actually do something significant to get a lot better instead of a little better. Because one day I would eventually like this team to break out of this cycle of never even making the playoffs. It's been 17 years, 18, I can't even remember. 17, I think. So the team didn't do that. The team went out there and had their best season in over 15 years. They had their best season since probably 2003 or something. And it was really entertaining. And for that, I have to say, I think this season was a success by the standards that I set. But what does it mean? The team overachieved, and early in this season, I wasn't sure. I was thinking, hey, maybe these guys are really good. Maybe these guys are better than everyone gives them credit for. But I think this team really overachieved. They had five good players at the plate this year. They had five guys who could, swing a bat. One of them got here right before the trade deadline. The other guy got suspended more than half of the year for steroids. So when I went into this season, I looked at the lineup and was like, okay, I think this lineup can be good. I like the lineup. I just don't really like our pitching. I think our pitching is going to be a big problem this year, especially the starters. I didn't believe in any of those guys but Paxton, and he's not a superstar, so I I didn't feel good about it. But the team won a lot of games. This team got to what, 88, 89 wins, I think, because they had an elite closer who had an incredible season. One of the greatest seasons of all time by any closer ever. Just absolutely magnificent stuff. And after last year, I didn't have a ton of confidence in him, but he showed up this year. Probably the second best player on this team, second most valuable piece on this team. We got surprisingly good years out of Wade LeBlanc, who actually had the best ERA of any starter on the team. Paxton had a good year. Obviously, the no-hitter was awesome, but he also had a pretty good year. Gonzalez was passable. Mike Leake was below average, but only slightly so. So, as it turns out, and then you throw in guys like Elias, who made the occasional start, and some of the other small-time starters who made one or two appearances, and I could not believe how good this starting rotation was. They were an above-average starting rotation. I think the only guy we had who really just didn't have it anymore was Felix, and I'm not surprised by that. So the pitching staff really overachieved, in my opinion. And because of that, especially because we had such a good closer, we were able to win a lot of close games. But when you get it right down to it, this was probably a 500 at best team that overachieved by close to like 10 games. Because they were really good in close games, because they had an elite closer. They had good pitching in general. I mean, even like James Pazos was a good guy out of the bullpen who we leaned on quite a bit, and I thought he delivered. A lot of people on the message boards don't like him, but I like Pazos a lot. And that is how we got to this almost 90-win season, because the lineup, which I liked coming into this season, I don't know. I would watch the games and I would swear, hey, these guys look good. And obviously some of them do. Haniger had an all-star caliber season. He played great. We put him in lead up for a while. He was great there. He was great in cleanup and, third. And he was good in the field. He was good on base. He looks like a future star in this league. And him plus Segura, who also had a good year, even though maybe he tailed off a bit at the end. He hit 300. He ran the bases pretty well. He didn't get on base as much as you would like, especially at the end of the season, but he was a really good player for us. That trade right there could be the future of the Seattle Mariners. It could be the best trade that any Seattle team has made in the history of their sports teams, unless you want to throw in like, you have to go back to stuff like maybe the Jay Buhner trade. So that was obviously money. Cano played half the season, but given what he had to work with, I think he played really well on the plate, at least. At the plate, he had a little bit of power. He was getting on base. I didn't think he was going to have that good of a season. I thought the age was going to start to catch up with him. It did not. Cruz, I was worried about Cruz. Cruz had an incredible season. Still hitting, close to 260, 37 home runs. I wasn't sure about Cruz at 37 years old. And he got it done. Span, who I loved after the trade deadline when we got him, I think he played really well for us. He was one of the few trade deadline pickups we made that I thought really worked. And with those few guys who swung the stick well, plus really good pitching, we won a lot of games. But the problem was that was all we had on offense. We had 5 guys who could swing the stick, and 2 of them only played half the season for us. So I don't know what it is, but I would watch the games and I would swear to God Ryan Healy was playing pretty well, but then I would look at the stats after the game and I'm like, oh, this guy sucks. This guy doesn't get on base. He hits, a very mediocre batting average. He's terrible in the field according to every metric I can find. He's got power, but I don't know what it is. I don't know why that guy looks so good in the game. Or not so good, but he looks pretty good in the game. Like, okay, this guy can be our first baseman. And then he gets put out there in the stat world, and they're killing this guy. They're like, oh, he's one of the worst first basemen in the league. The big ones, the big disappointments, and these are the guys that you can really kind of look at if you're wondering why this team fizzled out at the end after having so much success early. Kyle Seager. And I kept thinking, this dude is going to break out of it. This dude is going to have a really good month of July, August, or whatever. And it never happened. And this is a problem because he's under a big contract for a couple more years. And he's 30. You have to wonder if maybe he's just not the same player he was last year or the year before when he was like borderline all-star caliber. It was just bad, man. He wasn't even that good on defense this year, I don't think. Just he had a little bit of power, but he did not get on base at all. I think his numbers with runners in scoring position were okay, given how bad he was playing otherwise, but just bad, man. And that broke my heart because Seager's been my favorite player. He's the one guy I got a jersey of. And when a bunch of players who I didn't necessarily expect to be this good were really good, it was not fun to watch Seager just turn into a replacement level player, basically. Zunino, I don't know what we do with Zunino, guys. He's clearly a good catcher. He's a good catcher behind the plate. He's got power. And we can't get him over the Mendoza line barely, man. I don't know what you do with a guy like that. He's hitting 200. And this year he stopped walking. He stopped generating walks. He stopped working pitch counts. So I have no idea what we do with that. And, of course, Dee Gordon, fun player, cool guy, good in the field, good on defense. One of the worst players in the league at the plate. He doesn't get on base. He doesn't work pitch counts at all. He has no power. He's just fast, man. And I don't know. I don't know where that leaves us because Dee Gordon has never been a guy who works pitch counts, but he's traditionally been a guy who does a pretty good job of getting on base, and we just didn't have it this year, man. And by the end of the year, his ops was one of the worst on the team. One of the worst in the league, probably. So that left us where we were, where we just didn't have the firepower, and when the pitching gave even an inch, the team just couldn't win, it seemed like, especially as the season went on. So my problem is, what is it going to amount to? Because it was entertaining, but we have some pieces on this team, like the Segura / Haniger trade fruits, that can be part of a really good team. But they're already like 27 and 28. We got to get on it. And we have one of the worst farm teams in the league. Our farm system is barren. We have a couple of interesting prospects, but every other team in the league basically has a better future outlook than we do. So there's nothing much down there that we can count on. We're paying a lot of money to guys like Kyle Seager and Felix Hernandez who feel like they might just not have it anymore. What can we do to round out this lineup? And the pitching as well, because we have starting pitchers on this team who are okay. We have a couple that are good, but we still have a need there, especially if Felix goes. If Felix leaves the starting rotation, which I hope he does because he just doesn't have it anymore. So where do we look, guys? I mean, we're spending money on guys who aren't really producing anymore. The farm system, the only young guy who I'm really looking at right now to be a big-time contributor next year might be Vogelbach, because he did play well down the stretch. But other than that, it's guys like Ben Gamel, who I know is a pretty good player, but he's not going to win a whole bunch of games for you. He's just going to play all right and make some plays. Guys like Heredia, we know they're just decent utility type players, I guess. And it's tough. I don't know where you go from here because, like I said, Cruz might leave. Cano is going to be 36 next year, and at some point he is going to fall off. And it's frustrating, guys. It is frustrating. I haven't been frustrated with this team for a while, so don't get me wrong. It's great that I'm frustrated because it means that I care enough, and it means that the team is actually doing some things right. But what is this all going to amount to, and how can we get a few more bats so we don't have to stick, Mendoza line level players in our starting lineup? And where are we going to get pitching from, guys? This team hasn't drafted a good pitcher. This team has drafted like 4 good pitchers in the last 14 years. 4 good starting pitchers, excuse me. And the farm system is just dry. So, fun season. They entertained me. I loved watching this team. I think they got unlucky just that Oakland turned into the greatest team of all time. Fucking assholes. But they can't do anything about that. They played to the best of their ability, and then some that just ran out of gas. And that's the Mariners right now. We had a good season. I liked watching it. I'm happy with everything we did this year. I'm not convinced that we're going to be able to take advantage of some of these guys because we have a talented roster, and I'd like to see it amount to something more than just a team that is fun to watch. Don't know if I'm going to get it. Okay, that is my one Mariners video of the year. Maybe I'll make one before the season next year. I don't know, but they impressed me. They just let us down a little bit at the end. Okay, I'm going to start Final Fantasy XII Zodiac Age in like 10 minutes, 15 minutes after I'm done with this video. So you guys can come watch me stream if you happen to be watching this video right after I upload it. But, yeah. Big game in 2 days. I'll be talking about it. See ya.